And this is the second Google Hangout. So on this Google Hangout, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the a more holistic view of wellness, and then talking a little bit about weight loss myths, because that's mostly what I've gotten questions about. It seems like things that you read on the internet that sound like they could be credible, and if they are, and things like that. So starting off with the holistic view of wellness. So at this point, we've covered diet, exercise, sleep, and stress. And in the coming weeks, we're going to cover infectious disease and chronic disease. So all of these factors are really interconnected. For example, I found a longitudinal study of low-income women that showed several connections, primarily with stress and all these other factors. And so women that had a higher perceived stress also had a higher chance of, had higher BMIs and higher odds of being obese. Higher stress was also associated with lower rates of physical activity, increased television viewing time, and more frequent fast food consumption. This makes a lot of intuitive sense. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm stressed out, I often end up making poor choices. Even though I know that, you know, eating a good diet and working out would help me feel better, I just really don't want to. But it's kind of interesting to see these studies where they've actually proven that this is true. I found another study that looked at the physical response to stress. And so what they found was that there's something called a corticotropin releasing hormone that suppresses food intake. And so this is generally released at that first onset of stress. So when you first experience that stress, which can be really helpful, right? Because if you think about it in terms of a fight or flight response, when you're stressed out, you don't want to be hungry, you have to act. The problem is when that gets to be prolonged. So over a long period of time and you're continuing to feel that stress. And so while initially what happens in your body is that you eat less, over time, a hormone response is triggered that makes people crave high sugar and fat foods that are going to trigger your central reward pathways in the brain. And so over time, what you want is to feel better. And so this high fat, high sugar diet is going to make you feel better. If you think about it too, if you need to a big response right away in response to stress, you're going to need glucose, right? So that your muscles can work and so that you can act. You can run from a cheetah or do whatever. But anyway, so when you have this chronic stress, this other hormone cascade is triggered, which makes you want to eat unhealthy foods to make yourself feel better. They also early life experience on epigenetics. Genetics refers to how external factors can switch genes on or off. And this I find to be really interesting. So they found that when you're in utero, so when your mom is pregnant, there's a link between stress, so how stressed your mom is, and your mom's nutrition with your eating behaviors later in life. So how easily that hormone cascade is triggered to make you want to eat those unhealthy foods. They've also found that, you know, nutrition and stress and things in utero can also affect your risk of being obese later in life, and several other factors like mental health and other such issues, which is really amazing if you think about it. So even from the time that your mom is pregnant, all of these different health and wellness factors come into play. And they've also found that early in life, you have a similar sort of response. So if you, as a young child, are stressed very frequently, then that hormone cascade that's going to encourage you in a physical way to eat more high sugar, high fat foods is going to be triggered more strongly when you experience stress. Okay, so similarly, insufficient sleep has been associated with factors like increased calorie consumption, increased amount of snacking and number of meals eaten per day, as well as with obesity, which kind of makes sense. So if you're eating more and you're eating more frequently, there's a higher chance that you would be obese. So insufficient sleep refers to both a short sleep duration, so not sleeping long enough, so getting 5 hours of sleep a night instead of 8. And it also refers to decreased sleep quality. So like if you were waking up several times throughout the night. The mechanisms suggested that might be in play here for sleep linked to diet include more time and opportunity for eating, which makes sense, right? So if you're up 3 extra hours in the day, then you have that much more time to eat. Psychological distress. So not sleeping does cause a bit of psychological distress. Just think about when you haven't slept for a long time, you generally don't feel very good about that, right? Like you're generally feeling kind of tired and sluggish and things, and that psychological distress, again, talking about our previous topic with that cascade that that makes you want to eat high fat, high sugar foods, that gets triggered. You have an increased sensitivity to food rewards. So it feels even better to eat these unhealthy foods. It causes even a stronger response in your brain that is positive. Disinhibited eating is another mechanism that they think. So, so you know, if you're up late, you haven't been sleeping, you may be less inhibited to eat. So you may be less dissuaded from eating and eating all night long or whatever. You have more energy needs to sustain wakefulness. So you burn more calories when you're awake than you do when you're asleep. And so you need more calories. And so that might be another factor, as well as changes in appetite hormones. So being awake longer may make your hormones, may make you produce more hormones that make you hungrier. Okay, so in terms of physical activity, regular exercise has been linked to increased total sleep time, as well as quality, and a decrease in the amount of time it takes for you to fall asleep. Stress was linked to a decrease in physical activity adoption and maintenance in most people. So, you know, kind of like what we talked about before, often when people are stressed, they're less likely to make those healthy choices, and especially with things like physical activity, that's taking up more time, right? And a lot of us are stressed because we don't have enough time, and so then it's harder to make that decision to go to the gym after work. You know, you might want to spend that time doing something else, or you may just want to go to sleep. And so it is, so that intuitively makes sense, but it's cool that they were able to prove that or to show that. There was a subset of people in the study, however, that actually increased their exercise with stress, which again makes sense. You know, a lot of people use exercise as a coping mechanism, and it's a really great coping mechanism and a very, very healthy one. So for those people that are able to do that, you know, when they're under times of stress, then they actually exercise more, which is great. And so that's just a little bit of an overview on how sleep and stress are also linked with diet and exercise, which I feel like are generally what we think of when we think of healthy lifestyles and healthy weight maintenance and things like that. So, and again, this is why we often talk about lifestyle changes. And so you want to be able to sustain these activities over your lifetime, but then also, you know, it's not just about one factor. You know, being healthy isn't just about eating well. You know, it's also about physical activity and sleep and stress, and managing all of these things together is going to create a more healthy lifestyle for yourself, and decrease your risk of chronic diseases. So, so when we get to chronic disease, you'll see, again, even more so how all of these things are interconnected. So the less healthy versions of these things, so like poor diet, insufficient exercise, or a lot of sedentary time, and a lot of sleep and stress issues tends to increase your risk of chronic disease. Whereas on the flip side, if you try to manage your diet, exercise, sleep, and stress, then it's preventative for chronic disease. And And this includes diseases like heart disease, diabetes, cancers, and even dementia, even mental health kind of chronic disease issues. And a lot of chronic disease is also linked with inflammation. And a lot of these things that we talked about are also linked to inflammation, which may be the mechanism by which all of this is connected and works together, although that has not been 100% shown. And with inflammation, just to be clear, inflammation is a helpful and natural response to a stressor. So like if you get a fever or you get sick, you have an infection, then you get inflammation. And this is the body's way of protecting yourself and of fighting off these infections or other type of things, generally infections. And so it's a healthy and needed response. And so you do need certain factors in your life that are pro-inflammatory. And mostly when we talk about that, we're talking about dietary sources of pro-inflammatory components. So things like saturated fats. These are important. You do need these in your diet. But the problem is that in the American diet, generally speaking, people get a lot of these pro-inflammatory foods, so things that are high in saturated fat, like fried foods or high fatty cuts of red meats, things like that, and as well as sugar. Refined sugar is pro-inflammatory, so people are getting a ton of those, and what they're not getting a lot of are those anti-inflammatory type of foods. So these are primarily fruits and vegetables. And if you all remember from when we talked about nutrition, there is a very, very small subset of Americans that actually get enough fruits and vegetables in their diets. And so most people are not getting enough of these foods. And so if you think about it, your body is generally speaking all about balance. And so if you have too many of these pro-inflammatory factors and not enough of the anti-inflammatory factors, and what you're getting is a case where you could have too much inflammation in the body. And so it's important to get some of these or enough of these anti-inflammatory factors to help you out, to create that balance. And so other than fruits and vegetables, there's also a lot of nuts that are high in unsaturated fats. So walnuts, almonds, things like that. Olive oil is a really good source of unsaturated fat. High fatty fish, so things like salmon, are also really high in these unsaturated fats that are anti-inflammatory. And interestingly enough, so fish oil is actually, I think currently still, the only supplement that has been proven to actually have a positive response in the body. So taking fish oil actually can help decrease your risk of heart disease, and it can help create a better balance of these pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory fats in your body. So getting a lot of these fatty fishes, nuts, seeds, fruits and vegetables can be very, very important for your diet and to keep you healthy. And so if you think about those types of foods, it makes a lot of sense that diets like the Mediterranean diet are often recommended. So if you think about what is included in a diet, in the Mediterranean diet, it's often a lot of, especially dark leafy greens, but a ton of vegetables, a ton of fruits. You know, there's often a lot of beans, like walnuts, almonds, things like that. Generally speaking, there's a lot of fish in the Mediterranean diet and not a ton of red meat. And so that's not the only diet by any means that helps manage inflammation. Any diet that would include those factors would. A Japanese diet, the Seventh-day Adventists that follow a primarily vegetarian diet and a very healthy one, are also examples of dietary, of types of diets, I suppose you could say, that would help you manage inflammation. But again, you don't have to follow anything specifically. Just including those factors into your diet can be very helpful to manage inflammation, which again, inflammation is linked to chronic disease. So So other factors that affect inflammation are getting too little or too much sleep. So we often think about too little sleep because that's generally the issue. But if you were to sleep 12 hours a day and things too, that can also be harmful on your body. Again, it's really important to think about things in terms of a balance. Generally speaking, everything is better when in a balance. When you're talking about your body, chronic stress can also trigger an immune response that can increase inflammation. This can be damaging when it's, again, chronic, so over a long period of time, because your body doesn't really have anything to fight when you're stressed over things like paperwork or, I don't know, anything else going on at your job or just in your life. There's nothing to fight. And so what happens is you get inflammation, that low-grade inflammation that doesn't go away. It's just there for a long period of time. And this can be really damaging. So obesity in and of itself is also an independent risk factor for inflammation and thereby for chronic disease because fat cells actually release inflammatory proteins. So that's why obesity is often cited as just a pro-inflammatory state. So again, in general, eating a balanced diet, getting adequate sleep, and managing stress can decrease levels of inflammation and therefore your risk for chronic disease. Exercise is a bit more complicated, although for your average person, exercise is very, very, very healthy. It's a very good thing to get. And increasing your levels of exercise is great for reducing inflammation. For the most part. So during exercise, many of the primary hormones released are the same as those that are released with stress. So this could potentially increase inflammation. However, this is generally over a short period of time. It's just for while you're exercising, you're releasing these hormones. Moderate intensity exercise up to 60 minutes a day can actually lower inflammation, however. So this is even more than the recommendation of at least 30 minutes most days, which is 150 minutes per week. And so most Americans are not meeting these levels anyway. So exercising for the vast majority of people is going to be super helpful for inflammation. If a person already has a disease linked to inflammation, however, getting vigorous exercise, high amounts of vigorous exercise may not be great for them because vigorous exercise can be linked to increased levels of inflammation. And so just if you already have a disease that's linked with inflammation, any kind of chronic disease, most of these people are regularly seeing their doctors. A lot of them are following diet and exercise plans that have to be approved by a doctor, and doing this vigorous exercise may be a little too stressful on their bodies. But for the vast majority of people, exercise will help you manage inflammation. So with management of stress, sleep, healthy diet, and proper training, your average person should be able to follow a very vigorous, high level of physical activity without any kind of problems related to inflammation. That really shouldn't be much of a concern for the vast majority of people. So again, just when talking about pro and anti-inflammatory foods and behaviors, this is a balance. So I'm always a little bit weary to talk about things to reduce in your diet because I feel like sometimes they get misinterpreted. I know oftentimes when we talk about diabetes with people, what they think is that they can never have sugar again, or they shouldn't ever eat carbs. And so I don't want you to think that you should never have any saturated fats or things like that. It's more of a balance. So especially when talking about things like diabetes, and again, refined sugars are linked to inflammation, which is linked to both obesity and a risk of diabetes. But it's more about getting a consistent carbohydrates for those that have diabetes. So eating a healthy, balanced diet and having carbs regularly throughout the day to manage your blood glucose levels is really important. And again, you do need some saturated fats, just like how you need some cholesterol for your cells to work properly, although your body makes its own cholesterol. But yeah, just with diet, I think it's really important to push the balance. Try to eat healthy whole foods versus processed foods, and not too much of one thing or the other, and you're probably good and very healthy. You incorporate that, you take that into account with diet and exercise and sleep, stress management, and you should be good to go. Okay, so let me just chatting or just looking through my notes real quick here. Oh, okay, so one thing that I also didn't mention was that there are some herbs and spices that are also known to be anti-inflammatory that you may have heard about a lot recently. So turmeric, ginger, curry, cinnamon, oregano, cayenne, and chili peppers. All of these things have been linked, or they have been shown to have some anti-inflammatory factors. I can just say from personal experience, so I do put cinnamon in my coffee, partially for this reason. I drink ginger turmeric tea. It's delicious. If you guys have heard about, there's this cleansing tea that people talk about that has apple cider vinegar. I think it's cayenne pepper and I believe turmeric that people are promoting. While this may not be linked to any profound weight loss, these things are often marked as weight loss or as like being able to remove toxins from the body and other such things. That is not 100% accurate, but it is anti-inflammatory, the cayenne and the turmeric, and the apple cider vinegar is a probiotic, and so it encourages healthy bacteria in your stomach, which makes for better digestion. And so, that drink may be a good idea, but just don't think that it's going to be like pulling toxins out of your body or helping you lose weight. Those claims are a little strong, but it is a healthy thing to do. Which brings me to our next topic. So I guess that is jumping the gun a little bit, but all about certain misconceptions around weight loss and health in general. Sorry, the lighting just got weird. Okay. So talking about weight loss misconceptions, several of the questions that I got were about fat burning. So during exercise, your muscles use stored carbohydrates, which are called glycogen, in your muscles to do the activity, to have the energy to do what you're doing. And so these are used first, and then you can build up your glycogen stores, which isn't super necessary unless you're doing something like running a marathon or doing sustained physical activity, but you can do that by carb loading the day before. And so that's like, I don't know if you guys had this, but when we were in high school, before big races and things, we'd have spaghetti dinners before the night before and things like that. And so that just builds up the amount of energy in your muscles, which makes it so that you can go further, longer, you can perform more at your best. But for most people, that's not necessary for the level of physical activity that they're getting. But anyway, so your body first uses that glycogen. And then once those stores are used up, then your body uses blood glucose or your blood sugar. And to increase your blood sugar, once whatever is already in there is broken down or is used, your body breaks down carbohydrates, fats, and to a lesser degree, proteins to give you that energy. So fats provide a portion of the energy you burn across a range of exercise intensities, but they decrease as a percent as the intensity of exercise increases. So technically, as a percent of the calories that you're burning, more of those are going to come from fats at lower intensity than at higher intensity. However, when you are doing vigorous exercise, you're burning more calories in general, and so in the end, you end up burning more fat but it's just a lower percentage. I know sometimes like at the gym and things, you know, it'll give you like on some of the machines, the cardio machines, you know, it'll show like, oh, you're in your fat burning range or something like that. That would be that it's at a higher percentage of fat burn. But again, the amount of fat that you're burning is directly related to the number of calories that you're burning. And so there isn't like a specific intensity or type of exercise per se that's going to help you burn fat. Also, and I think I talked about this on the last Google Hangout, but you also can't target your fat loss. So, you know, when you see all those things on the internet and it's like lose belly fat in just 10 days and things like that, you actually lose weight in the order that you gained it in. And so if you gained weight in your stomach first, and then you gained a little weight in your, I don't know, upper arms, and then you gained a little more in your stomach, and then you gained wherever else, you lose it in that same order that you gained it. And you can tone the muscles underneath, but you can't actually target your weight loss in any specific area. I also talked about this a little bit in the last Hangout, but just thinking about intensity, so going back a little, I apologize, you know, because we were talking about that with the percentage of fat that you burn, but there is something called the talk test. So it's considered low intensity if you can sing, moderate intensity activity if you can talk but not sing, and vigorous if you have trouble speaking more than a couple of words at a time without taking a big breath. And so that just gives you an idea of the level of exercise that you have. Again, you're going to burn more calories with vigorous exercise faster, and so you're going to probably burn more fat. But, you know, at the lower intensities, if you work out longer, then you'll burn more fat. You know, that's how you lose weight, is, you know, just limiting your calories and then or burning them through physical activity. So, okay, so, you know, again, just keeping in mind that the amount of weight that you lose is, in a generic sense, you know, this isn't 100% accurate, but the difference between the number of calories that you eat versus the number of calories that you're burning. Generally speaking, to lose 1 pound of weight a week, which is considered healthy weight loss, you need to decrease your intake by 500 calories or burn an extra 500 calories. And in order to, so if you do that every day, so you take out 500 calories from your normal diet, at the end of 7 days, then you should burn 1 pound, because it's 3,500 calories equals 1 pound of body weight. So that's just how it works in a generic sense. There are a lot of other factors that get thrown into there, but like genetics, but generally speaking, that's how it works. So now we'll get into myths about fat burning. So one that I've seen is that working out on an empty stomach burns more fat. And so the logic behind this is that your blood glucose is low at that time, since you haven't recently eaten, so that your body will start burning fat faster. And that is not 100% how it works. So, you know, as I talked about before, your body burns glycogen stored in your muscles first, which depends more on what you ate the day before. And so depending on, you know, how fast that takes to burn all your glycogen, you may or may not be getting to burning fat any faster. Also, when you work out with low blood glucose from not eating, this often decreases the intensity at which you can exercise because you don't have that energy available. And so in the end, you might actually be burning less calories and, you know, working a little less hard because you physically couldn't work any harder without any blood glucose in your system. So again, this may lead to less total fat burn, or, you know, the same amount as if you would have just eaten, you know, that day or whatever. And again, this depends on the length of time that you exercise and the total number of calories that you eat and things like that. But, you know, working out on an empty stomach does not necessarily, or it doesn't help you burn any more fat than if you were to eat. And so a couple of people have asked about like when should you be eating, both before or after physical activity and things like that. What's the ideal? So it's generally recommended that you eat a small meal an hour before you work out, or a large meal 3 hours before you work out. Again, just to help build up those blood glucose levels a little bit, so that you can work at a higher intensity and get the most out of your exercise. And then also without giving yourself a stomach ache. And because if you're running or doing things like that, if you eat right before, often it feels like there's like a brick in your stomach, because all of your blood is being sent to your arms and your legs instead of to your stomach to digest. So it can just cause like a little bit of stomach upset. So you don't want to eat like right before you work out necessarily, and give yourself a little time to digest. But it is good to increase those blood glucose stores a little before you work out. So then after working out, it's generally recommended that within about a half an hour after working out, again, this is working out really hard, then you may want to have a high carb and protein snack. Not necessarily anything big, but something small to rebuild up your glycogen stores in your muscles, and then also to help repair your muscles, because exercise, while it's awesome and does in the end help to build your muscles, there is damage done when you're running or doing any physical activity. You are breaking muscle fibers. It does in the end make them bigger and better and all that great stuff. But you do need some of that protein to help with muscle repair, and then mostly the sugar for the glycogen to replenish your glycogen stores. So an example of this is just 1 serving of low-fat chocolate milk, non-fat chocolate milk. It's probably the best to control your calories, unless that's not what you need because you're getting a ton of exercise. But chocolate milk is generally regarded to be one of the best after workout snacks. But you can do a lot of other things as well. Peanut butter toast, something like that is also really good. So, and again, all of this is not super related to fat burning. Trying to maximize when you eat and how you eat to maximize your performance. And doing all these things again, or fat burning again, just depend on the intensity that you're working out, and the duration that you're working out. Because in the end, fat burning is mostly this in and out equation: calories in, calories out. So one study I found in their study that when subjects were told that a specific exercise was fat burning, they actually ate more calories afterwards. So it was like a mental compensation. So, you may not even want to in your brain think about like, oh, this is a fat burning activity. Oh, I'm burning so many calories. I'm doing so much of this or that. Because what they found is when you label it like that you actually end up thinking, oh my God, I burned all these calories. I deserve this piece of cake now, or I deserve to eat all of this extra serving of pasta, or whatever that it is, because you feel like you earned it because you worked out extra. And that is completely fine if what you're going for is weight maintenance, because that's true, right? But if what you're looking for is weight loss, labeling something as fat burning and can actually lead to the opposite effect. And some people end up gaining weight when they work out and they're not sure why. And it could be because it takes a long time to burn calories, much longer time than it takes to eat them. So like if you're on the elliptical for an hour, for example, or running's probably an easier example. But you may burn like 400, 450, maybe 500 calories an hour. So an equivalent amount of food would be like it's 250 calories in 1 cup of yogurt, or in like a half a cup of almonds would be 500 calories. Candy bars are usually about 250 calories, things like that. So it's pretty easy to overeat in compensation. And you know, sometimes I think that it's really easy to feel like you're burning even more calories than you are. You know, not realizing that it takes a really long time to burn calories. And again, it takes not a lot of time at all to eat those calories. One cookie, 250 calories. You have 2 cookies, you're done, you know? So keeping that in mind too, of how you talk to yourself about certain activities, and, you know, just be careful with how you label things and how you think about them. Okay. So then the next topic is also a really big one. And you see a lot of these things on the internet, is fat-burning foods. One that's become pretty popular is coconut oil, and it's being promoted as fat-burning. Other examples are apple cider vinegar, green tea, almonds. All of these things have been cited as foods that will help you burn fat. So the first thing to keep in mind is that all foods contain calories. And so if you're looking at this equation of calories in and calories out, any foods that you eat are going to add calories. So if you're adding these to your diet versus substituting out other foods for these foods, what you're getting is a net calorie increase, which would be working against you. In the example of coconut oil, fats in general, as you all know from week 2, contain 9 grams of or 9 calories per gram, which is more than double the amount for proteins and for sugars. And so you can get a lot of calories in a really small amount. 2 tablespoons of coconut oil is 250 calories. So, you know, if you add that into your coffee every morning or something like that, you know, however you're adding in coconut oil, if you're not removing anything else, then that's an extra 250 calories. You know, so over 2 weeks, you'd be gaining a pound every 2 weeks if you kept that up. Or that's an extra 250 calories that you'll have to burn with physical activity. And so just keep those things in mind. You know, substituting is great. Just adding in, you know, you may be working a little bit against yourself. So one way in which coconut oil in particular may help you lose weight would be that fats make you full. You know, they are more calories. They're very filling, and so if you're eating a meal that includes foods or fats, then you may end up eating a little bit less because you feel more full. And so, you know, that's not exactly, doesn't exactly make it a fat burning food, but it may help with weight loss. You know, it's just you have to be aware of that. You know, it's also very easy to still get more calories and still eat a lot if you have high fat foods in your diet. And so, but if you add those in and you keep that in mind and you're keeping track of calories or servings in each food group and things that you're getting, then fats could be very helpful. You know, it's things like sugars, refined grains aren't very filling, and so you could totally load up on those kind of calories very easily. You know, if you add a fat into the mix, then you might not feel so hungry, so you will eat less. Not to belabor the point, but anyway, so that's one way that coconut oil could be helpful in weight loss or weight management. And again, this is not a fat burning quality of that food. So other foods like apple cider vinegar, as I mentioned before with that apple cider vinegar drink, have probiotic properties. And so this will just help you digest a little bit better, and it might reduce things like gas and gastric distress and things like that that make you feel uncomfortable and things like that. So there's not necessarily a link there, or there hasn't been a link shown between apple cider vinegar and fat burning or weight loss. But you know, it is this probiotic that does help with digestion. There have been a couple of studies that have linked apple cider vinegar to to maintaining your blood glucose levels. And so again, that can help you from crashing. So having your blood glucose go very high and then very low. And when you're at that very low point, that's a time when a lot of people overeat. So in that way, it might be able to help you with managing your calorie intake and in managing the amount that you're eating. Obviously that's a very good effect for people who have diabetes or pre-diabetes or are worried about their blood glucose levels. And it's just healthy for everyone. In the study that I saw, it was an apple cider vinegar-based salad dressing that was shown to help moderate blood glucose levels. And so, it does have that effect. It is a probiotic, so it is a healthy food, but it is not linked to weight loss or fat burning. So the best diet approach, again, is just to eat a balanced diet and reduce your calorie intake by about 500 calories per day to lose 1 pound per week. And that 1 pound per week as a healthy weight loss is for average healthy people. For those that are obese, up to 2 pounds a week is considered to be healthy and safe in weight loss. So just thinking about some of these, I don't know exactly what to call them, diet scams, but maybe misconceptions, inaccurate theories that are promoted on websites. There are a few that keep popping up. And so we'll talk about these. I'm going to talk about them more in a general sense, but these are just examples of some things that you might come across when you're looking on the internet. And it's just important to evaluate these sources and try to figure out, if they are accurate or not. You might want to do a little research, but in general, when we're talking about metabolism boosting pills, fat or carb blocking pills, weight loss teas, diet patches or jewelry, or body wraps or slim suits. Generally speaking, when you hear about those things, you can kind of dismiss them a little bit, or just don't take their claims too seriously. We'll go through each one of these, and some of these items do have some positive factors. They might just not be directly linked to weight loss. So just kind of, it all depends on what you expect from them. And I just wouldn't expect these to be super efficacious. So the first one, for metabolism boosting pills, these claim to help you burn calories and fat. These can be dangerous uppers, as we would call them. So those are things like kava kava and ephedra. And what they do is increase your blood pressure and your heart rate potentially to dangerous levels. And so like ephedra is now no longer legal. I think kava kava still is. But these are things you want to be really helpful or careful with. And so it's kind of like if you have too much caffeine, you have that heart racing feeling. This may make you want to go out, do more physical activity. You're probably burning more calories because you're more fidgety, things like that. But they're not necessarily really safe, and especially if you were to do vigorous exercise. So these exercises that are increasing your heart rate while you're taking these pills, that could be really dangerous. And so, just be aware of that and be careful with anything that's considered a metabolism boosting pill. It's a little bit scary. So that's the first one. The second type of common diet scam that gets promoted is fat or carb blocking pills. And so these work in a similar way to like how lactose intolerance works in the body. So they make the body unable to break down either fats or more recently, I've seen more things with carb blockers. So this can result in problems like diarrhea, bloating, gas, inability to absorb certain important nutrients. So I don't know if any of you guys remember this from the late 90s, early 2000s when they were selling those, they were potato chips, and they had like this, oh man, what was it called? I should have written it down. Like oleo or something, but it was a fat blocker. And but one of the problems was that it was causing this massive stomach distress, and they ended up taking those chips off the market. And that's what a lot of these pills are going to do. And you know, especially when you're talking about with fats, the fat or the pill or the vitamins that require fat to be absorbed, you know, A, D, E, and K. If you don't have any fat, if you're unable to process that, then you won't be able to absorb those nutrients. So that can put you at risk for having nutrient deficiencies, which can be really dangerous. And so, you know, again, this is kind of like those metabolism boosting pills. You know, they might work in a sense because you're not absorbing those calories, but, you know, some of these side effects are probably really not worth it. So just keep that in mind. The next one is weight loss teas. And weight loss teas are very similar in their side effects to these, to the fat or carb blocking pills. Most of them are just laxatives. And so, you know, it depends on where you're at and what you have in your stores, but around here, there's a lot of, they call it dieter's tea or ballerina tea. I see it a lot in the Asian stores, but now they also have it at regular stores too. And these are straight up laxatives. It has senna in it, which is a natural laxative. And so you may be losing weight because it's water weight from going to the bathroom more. And so that's how those teas often work. Some of them also have a lot of caffeine. And that would work similar to those metabolism boosting pills. You know, it's going to make your heart race, it's going to increase your blood pressure. So, you know, depending on how much is in there and how much you take, you know, it may have very little effect on how many calories you're burning. You could burn a lot more because, you know, you're all amped up. But is that 100% safe? Is that something you want to do? I don't know. But so that's the deal with weight loss teas. Diet patches and jewelry. So diet patches in particular usually contain the same herbal ingredients that are metabolism boosting pills or in tea. And so the premise is that you're going to absorb it through your skin and that's how it'll work. You know, you're going to have the same kind of side effects as you do with the pills and with the tea. So again, just keep that in mind. For the jewelry, there's just nothing that's been found with any of those weight loss jewelry things that has been shown to be effective. So they're not harmful, but they're also likely not doing anything. So before you spend your money, you know, maybe think about something else besides those the diet jewelry. So the last one is body wraps or swimsuits. So what this does is lock in your body heat, and it may help you lose weight because you're sweating more, because your body heat has no way to escape. And so a lot of what you're losing is water weight. And so this is, again, similar to the weight loss teas that are laxatives. And so you may be losing a lot of water weight, but then as soon as you become hydrated again, you're just going to gain it back. And so this isn't really a way to burn fat, but you will cut weight. And so, you know, again, it's just not a super effective way to actually lose weight. So that is all I have in my notes for today. I hope I answered most of your questions. And, you know, good job on all of your midterm exams. There's only 2 more weeks of the class left. So, you know, get yourself prepared for the final and have a good rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.